Hi everyone, and welcome to video number 3 on Weimar and the rise of the Nazis in Germany. And this video, ladies and gentlemen, is all about the Treaty of Versailles. Now you might ask, why am I dressed like this? Why have I got this 60s wig and these 60s glasses on? Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's because one of the great songwriters of the 1960s, a man called John Lennon, of the Beatles, the late, great John Lennon. Now, he wrote many good songs, but 2 of them apply to what I'm going to try to talk about in this video. In 1972, he wrote Happy Christmas, War is Over, his great Christmas song. And before that, 3 years before that, 1969, he wrote All We Are Saying is Give Peace a Chance. War is over, give peace a chance. And that's what this video is about. World War I was over, November 1918. It was time for peace. And what we're going to look at is the Peace Treaty of Versailles and how it affected and how it impacted on the new Weimar government in Germany. So, here we go. Hope it's useful. I better take these glasses off because I actually can't see a thing. Whoa! Put my real glasses on. Oh, get rid of the wig. Yes, I know it's a wig. You thought it wasn't. Thank you very much. So, it was time for peace. Now, here's one of my favourite books of the period. The Peacemakers. Peacemakers, it's called. And it's all about the Treaty of Versailles. Big, thick book that I've read so that you don't have to. Now, 6 months that changed the world. November 1918, war ended. June 1919, we get the final peace treaty. And there on the cover, you might just be able to see 3 of the important men involved in the treaty. The tallest man, President Woodrow Wilson of America. His approach was, let's try and help Germany. Let's try and rebuild a peace that means Europe will not fight again. That was his idea, Wilson. Over here, David Lloyd George, Prime Minister of Great Britain. Now, he'd just been elected, 1918, he'd won an election, and in that election, he'd borrowed a phrase from another politician where he said the Germans should be squeezed until the pips squeak. So he wanted revenge, certainly more than Wilson. Now, he was a little bit more moderate than that, but he also felt that Germany should in some way be punished. In the middle, we have Clemenceau, the leader of France, nicknamed the Tiger. Well, he's really showing his claws. Sorry. Can't promise that won't be the last joke. Because Clemenceau, the Tiger, he desperately wanted revenge on Germany. Why should that be? Why would the American president have a different approach to the French leader? What do you think? Well, of course, America didn't come into the war until 1917. America had not suffered as much. Most of the trenches, most of the damage was actually in France. So the French wanted revenge, the Americans wanted a little bit of a different approach, and Lloyd George a little bit in the middle, maybe a bit towards France and revenge. So they are the people. What peace treaty did they come up with? Well, let's have a look. Now, June 1919, the peace treaty is presented to to Germany. Germany had no part in it. That's because, in history, the winners are grinners. It's the winners who actually make history. If you win, people want to hear from you. You're in, and you can have a grin. But if you lose, people ignore your views, and you get the blues. Sorry. So Germany had lost. Therefore, they were told what to accept by the winners. And the Germans were not pleased about this. they said that the treaty was dictated to them. They called it a diktat. I'll come back to that later in this video. So the treaty itself. Now, an easy way to remember the terms of the treaty, ladies and gentlemen. Lamb. L-A-M-B. Lamb. The Germans, you might say, were like a lamb to the slaughter. They had no say in it. They couldn't argue against it. Lamb. Now let's have a look. L for land. A for army. M for money. B for blame. Lamb. Now I've put the headlines in there. Land, Germany lost 13%. Army, limited to 100,000 men. Money, they had to pay £6.6 billion. And blame, Article 231, they got the blame for World War I. Now let's work our way through that. Land, 13%. Well, the winners, remember the winners are grinners, the winning countries took parts of Germany. Alsace-Lorraine went to France. Eupen and Malmedy went to Belgium. West Prussia and Posen went to Poland. In fact, Germany was split in two. East Prussia was still Germany, but was cut off from the main part of Germany. Danzig, a city on the sea, a coastal port, important, taken from Germany and put in international control. Schleswig went to Denmark. Germany lost a huge amount of land, and about 6 million German people were placed into different countries. How would they feel? Anger. They had no say in it. They were forced into it by this treaty, so they were not pleased. As well as losing land and people, 6 million, they lost 46% of their iron, 15% of their coal. The coal fields in an area, a region called the Saar, S-A-A-R, was given to France for 15 years. So they are losing control of their coal fields. Well, I suppose you could say that's undermined German confidence. Undermined coal. Sorry. That joke was the pits. Coal pits. Right, that's enough. No more. Sorry about that. So, let's get serious. Land. The issues about land made the German people angry. A for army. 100,000 men only allowed in the army. Now you might think, well, that's quite a big figure, but compared to the size of the army in World War I, when France, Britain, Germany, Russia had millions of soldiers, here Germany had been limited to 100,000 because the winners, France, etc., said, well, if we make them have a small army, they'll never be able to fight us again. That was their thinking. On the other side, it made the Germans feel vulnerable. So they're angry and they're vulnerable. As well as the army, of course. Germany was allowed no tanks, no heavy artillery, no air force, no submarines, a few ships, 6 battleships. Also, in their own country, the Rhineland, which is the border between France and Germany, the German army was not allowed in their own land because the French said, oh, you might come across. So no, you can't send your soldiers into that part of your own country. Meanwhile, until 1930, the Allied soldiers could be in the Rhineland. The Rhineland was, to use the posh word, demilitarized from the German point of view. So Germany felt vulnerable because of the situation regarding the armed forces. M for money. Now the key word here is reparations. Paying for all the repairs to the damage done in World War I. And the figure quoted was £6.6 billion. That's a lot of money. And the Germans will think, hang on a minute. Yes, some of our bombs caused the damage. to the factories, the land, the bridges, the roads, but also French bombs, British bombs, American bombs. Only the Germans were being forced to pay the reparations. How would they feel about that? Well, they thought it was unfair. And as a double whammy for the Germans, they're saying, well, it's unfair that we have to pay this, and it's going to damage our economy. It's going to damage our recovery. So they were not pleased about the M for money. And the final one, B for blame. The War Guilt Clause, Article 231. And that clause said, Germany, you were responsible for World War I. Therefore, you have to pay for all the damages. But Germany's saying, well, yeah, we fought in World War I, but did we cause it all? It's a bit like at school. Not that I'm saying you're a naughty person, certainly not. But just say 4 or 5 of you get involved in some incident, and you're all doing something maybe wrong, but the teacher just blames you, and the others get away with it. How would you feel about that? So, Article 231, the War Guilt Clause, the German people really hated it, possibly more than any other. They felt it was utterly wrong. They felt humiliated, and they thought it should not have happened. So there we see the conditions, the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. If you remember LAN, L-A-N-B, hopefully you would always be able to remember the terms in an exam. Remember, the Germans thought it was a diktat. It was dictated to them. The winners were dictated to the losers. And they were not pleased. A final word, a German word. There it is at the bottom. Dolchstoss. Dolchstoss. It's the German word for a phrase that we have called stabbed in the back, betrayed. And that's the word that began to be used about the Treaty of Versailles, and more importantly, about the people, the German people who signed it. Dolchstoss, stabbed in the back. Now let's just explain that a bit more. I've already shown in this video, most Germans hated the Treaty of Versailles. It's unfair, it was humiliating, they were angry. They wanted to blame someone. The people who got the blame were their own government, the Weimar government. Erzberger had signed the armistice in November. Ibert, president of the Weimar Republic, signed the acceptance of the peace treaty in June. He didn't want to. No, he did not want to. And some of the other members of the Weimar government actually resigned. They didn't want to sign the treaty, but they had no choice. The Allies had said, look, if you don't sign it, we'll threaten to renew the war. We will invade Germany. We're far more powerful than you. There's no way you can do it. There's no way you can stop us. So, the Weimar government had to sign it. But the German public didn't know this. They didn't know that Weimar and their representatives really had no option. So the German people started to refer to their own government as the November criminals. They'd signed the armistice in November. They were criminals. They'd stabbed the German army in the back. Because the German army had walked back to Germany, the idea could begin to sort of spread that the German army was undefeated on the battlefield. It was the politicians who'd caused them to give up and lose the war. This idea that they were stabbed in the back. Ibert himself, here's a quote from Ibert. He said to the German army, "Your sacrifice and deeds are without parallel. No enemy defeated you." Even Ibert said that. And that idea spread, and the belief spread, that somehow it was the Weimar politicians who'd agreed to the Treaty of Versailles, the diktat. They'd stabbed the German army in the back. that was going to have huge implications later for the Weimar government, as I will explain. So, there we have the Treaty of Versailles. The Weimar government, the politicians have been blamed for this anger, humiliation, unfair treaty that has been dictated, imposed upon them. They get the blame amongst the German people. And it did have a long-term impact. Every time things went wrong in Germany, Weimar, oh, typical, look at them, they're rubbish, and they stabbed our army in the back, it's all their fault. Can you see? Can you see what's going to happen there over the next few years? Weimar would become unpopular. And it might lead to economic and political weaknesses, economic and political challenges, economic and political trouble ahead. And there were many challenges, there were many problems which came about as a result of the Treaty of Versailles. And the next video, ladies and gentlemen, we'll look at least two of those key major challenges in the early 1920s, big problems for Eber and the Weimar government. So, there's the Treaty of Versailles. The winners, the grinners, the losers, the big losers, Germany. The peacemakers, they wanted to make a peace. Did they do a very good job? Well, as we look at more videos coming next, you'll have to have a think about that. As ever, I hope it's been useful. Next video, the challenges, yet more challenges for Weimar. Coming soon. All the best now. I'll speak to you later.